Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 1 of a new 20-part series I'm going to be doing on the second founding chapters of every Space Marine Legion in order. I'll be covering them from 1 to 20, and then filling in the gaps as we go, just in case there weren't any. And it's going to be discussing chapters, war bands, or anything that would have come off of the original Legion. I have to add that last caveat for this specific chapter I'm about to cover. They aren't exactly a chapter per se, but they are incredibly important to the setting at large, especially right now. So what Legion is first? The Dark Angels, which are cool. They are one of the legions that has definitely grown on me as I have read more 40k literature. They have a lot of interesting second founding chapters. I was initially considering covering the Angels of Absolution, because they have a bit of a funny perspective on the matter of the Fallen, where every other chapter of the Dark Angels looks at the Fallen Angels and go, oh, yeah, we have a lot of shame to bear in this regard, but we shall redeem ourselves. The Angels of Absolution said, nah, we good. We didn't do shit. And literally white-pilled themselves into no longer having depression. It's kind of silly. But after a great deal of thought, I realized that maybe the Angels of Absolution aren't the best chapter to start with here. And Dark Angels are pretty relevant in the lore right now, anyhow. So, if you couldn't tell by the name of the video itself, well, I'm covering the Fallen, and the newly created Risen. So, who are the Fallen, and why are they important? The Fallen are an anomaly in 40k, or at least they have been for quite some time. Essentially, due to some issues and a falling out with a mentor figure, the Lion sent his adoptive father, Luther, back to their homeworld of Caliban in order to train the new recruits, but also because the Lion realized pretty quickly that Luther wasn't really to be fully trusted, as Luther almost let a nuclear device explode that would have killed thousands of the Lion's men. Which, to the Lion's credit, Luther was falling to chaos very slowly and subtly, so Lord knows how much havoc he would have wreaked upon, the entirety of the Dark Angels if he had stayed with the major fleet. So he was sent back to Caliban to train the new recruits, and from what we know for the longest time, the Lion showed back up to Caliban, the forces of Caliban fired on the Lion, and the Lion ended up firing back, murdering the majority of them and destroying Caliban. Luther ended up fighting the Lion and wounding him in a duel. Luther was captured, but the majority of the Dark Angels serving under Luther ended up escaping. These are the best kept secret of the Dark Angels. Refusing to acknowledge their failure, they ended up calling these Marines the Fallen, and decided to hunt them down to the best of their ability, torture them, get more information on other Fallen, and then kill them. That's what we knew for the longest time, but due to recent lore updates, we now know a bit more about them. To put it into perspective, we didn't know if the Fallen were loyal, traitor, or both, because some of them worked with Chaos, and some seemed to work with the Imperium. On the tabletop, you could actually run them as either depending on what edition you were playing, which is kind of nutty. So, due to a lot of recent lore drops, with the Son of the Forest and the like, we have learned that only some of the Fallen actually knew what happened. Only those close to the top of the ranks at the time knew that the forces of Caliban fired first. Most of the forces of the Dark Angels were lied to, and were actually told that the Lion betrayed them and fired on Caliban first. So many of the fallen angels thought that the Lion was the traitor, and they were still loyal to the Imperium and the ideals that it held. The fallen angels were hunted by their Imperial counterparts relentlessly, so they didn't really get a point to confirm if they had or had not betrayed the Imperium of Mankind. In between the whole torture thing. So, the Fallen just weren't given the correct information, but some still clung to the idea of protecting mankind. A good example, a main character to the Son of the Forest book is Zabriel. He is a fallen angel destroyer who meets with the Lion and apparently For quite many years, he was protecting a small village of people who were in a chaos beast-infested wildlands. The lion, seeing his son, didn't kill him as he wanted to know what truly happened. One thing led to another, and the lion ended up realizing even though he wasn't the one who fired the first shot, he was wrong for being the one who wanted to fire the last. He slaughtered his own sons at the slightest provocation, and having it be pointed out as such and laid bare for the world to see was very eye-opening for him. As recompense, the lion offered him the ability to serve for the greater good of humanity once again, as long as Zabriel did not serve the forces of chaos. Thusly, the Risen were created. A faction that sort of came about because the lion had acquired a new teleportation-based power that caused him to hop between worlds, going through some ancient, ethereal, totally not wood-elven forest that would allow him to reappear on a different world. But the caveat is that every time he appears on a new world, there's some kind of fallen angel on there, and he would eventually discover them, speak with them, and ask if they would like to serve with him, which is the major difference between the old lion and the new lion. The old lion would not have given them a choice. It was either serve me or die. The new lion is learning from his past mistakes and maturing to realize that he can only ask them to serve him. Forcing them to serve would only cause what happened before to happen again. So, the Risen have been created from these ranks of individuals who choose to serve him. Learning from his past mistake, a draconian response is not going to get him as far as giving his sons free will to make their own decisions. Most of the sons they encounter are loyal. They never fled the ideals of the Imperium of mankind. The Risen are a force for good. They wish to change the world for the better, regardless of if it is in the bounds of imperial law dictated by the current day's order. That being said, the lion is in the Imperium Nihilus, which, if you don't know, is essentially the shitty part of the universe where warp travel is exceedingly difficult. So, the ability to warp between worlds through a magical not wood elf forest is not like it kind of makes it, hard for you to catch him for breaking laws and not paying taxes. With the Risen being a force for good in a universe gone mad, it is interesting to note that there are Chaos Marines among them. A good example of a Fallen-based warband is also in the Son of the Forest book, known as the 10,000 Eyes, led by a Fallen Chaos Sorcerer. With a few more Fallen members kind of sprinkled amongst their ranks, they did a lot of bad, from torturing Blood Angels to create perfect Berserk Shock Troopers by trying to harness the Black Rage and manifest it in things that are not vampires, to making an entire thing out of bone to create a ritual. It was weird. But they were incredibly evil and wanted to do a Dark Angel-style psyop where they were going to brainwash a chapter master and send them to Terra to meet with the Emperor and kill him. Which they ended up trying to do that with the lion, but you don't fucks with the lion is kind of the end point of that story. They ended up getting dealt with, but it was pretty funky. So, where does that leave us? Well, in the lore where I left off, they are trying to reconnect with the forces of Guilliman in order to understand what the fuck is going on. I know the lion ended up murdering the shit out of Angron with the Emperor's shield, but all in all, the setting is currently in a major state of flux because of the Fallen, or rather the Risen. So, I just want to see where things go from here. The Risen / the Fallen are very intriguing in terms of a faction of Space Marines. They are technically the first splintered faction of the Dark Angels, so I'd count them as second founding, and if you disagree, I don't care. It's my channel. I can say whatever I want. I could just spread misinformation. I could just make up everything. I could just do it and you'd believe me, or you'd watch it. But in terms of fighting style, the Risen probably would outclass the majority of current day Space Marines due to technology and just eons of fighting. They might not be as good at fighting other Space Marines, but they are sure as shit very well equipped with ancient combat weapons like a tyrannic greatsword, plasma burners, plasma casters, just great Crusade era Dark Angels tech, which is fucking dangerous. They are so fucking dangerous with the ability of the Lion to teleport them wherever they want that I think they're going to make a lot of waves in the Imperium Nihilus, especially because at the end of the Son of the Forest book, they ended up meeting with Commander Dante, which that's going to go places. But what do you all think of the Fallen, and what do you all think of the Risen? I want to know, as they're just very interesting. I find the idea that there was just this big miscommunication that no one really had the ability to rectify. We found out that some of the Fallen Marines, or the Risen, to them, the breaking of Caliban happened maybe 20 years in the past because of the effects of the warp sending them into the future. So it's still a fresh wound for them, but for some of them, they've been there for like hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's interesting to see what your guys' opinions is of them, so comment that down below. Also remember to like and subscribe as it helps with the channel, and I want to provide a special thanks for my channel members. And if you want to see all my videos early or get access to exclusive content, then become a channel member. It helps me stay afloat and produce this content for all of you. And until next time, no, I don't care about Cypher, stop asking about him.